Tax Increment District Review Committee to order. Need a roll call, please.
Eric Anderson on behalf of Mike Mosley.
Here.
Dr.
Lutz, yes.
Lutz, sorry. Dr. Crossland.
Here.
Barry.
Here.
Mosley.
Here.
Winters.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
And is Woods here? He's not here, is he? Okay. And Grayson.
Here. We got item number 2, approval of the minutes from October 20th, 2025.
You need a motion to approve?
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Did you say
Discussion.
my name on the roll call?
Winters.
Kirkpatrick?
Kirkpatrick. Nope. Gotcha.
Roll call on the motion to approve the minutes.
I don't have a second.
I second.
Yep.
Okay. Grayson.
Yes.
Mosley. Or Anderson.
Yes.
Gayla.
Yes.
Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
Crossland.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Mosley.
Yes.
Winters.
Yes.
Item 3, discussion of status of proposed tax increment districts and/or tax incentive districts, including but not limited to 3A, review of TIF process and purpose of review committee. 3B, potential boundaries for prospective increment district and incentive districts. Item 3C, potential infrastructure improvements and related project cost. And 3D, draft project plan.
Okay. Good afternoon. Did everybody read their homework over the weekend? No? Okay.
It's heavy reading for the heavy meal on Thursday.
I understand. Okay, well, I told the mayor that I have a hard out. I need to pass through those doors by 2:45. So hopefully we can go even faster than that, because I know you all would love not to be here until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Very quick overview again. This is a TIF review committee. So the city's put together a project plan. You've got a copy of that. We'll go through the highlights of it real quick here in a minute. Your task ultimately is to make a recommendation to the city with respect to that plan, whether or not they should move forward, don't move forward, maybe move forward with certain stipulations. And then the city will take that under advisement along with the planning commission. Will separately adopt a resolution, and there'll be public hearings that are held. And then once that's all complete, our anticipated timing is we would expect we'll have this on the planning commission meeting, which is next week, Tuesday, is that right? Is that right? Yes, either one of you. And then we would have it on the city council agendas in January, which I think is the 6th or 5th and the 20th, for the public hearing dates. That's kind of our schedule. And then at the 20th, that would be the first opportunity that the city would be able to consider its ordinance to actually adopt the TIF, adopt the project plan, put everything in place. So you'll note we've got an agenda item on after this part that is consideration of the draft resolution. We'll go through the resolution. If the committee feels like it's ready to move forward and doesn't want to have another meeting, you've got the ability to take that action today. If you want some more time to digest it, if we've got significant comments or feedback and we need to make some changes to things, then we can certainly schedule another meeting and come back. So it's not a pressure thing, but I just wanted everybody to understand why that's on there, just so we do have that opportunity. So, all right, so the TIF highlights. So this is the industrial park area that's out at the airport. There's a map on the project plan, which is in your documents. If you look at Exhibit A, it's maybe the easiest way to see everything in the context here. There's a blue shaded area that is the air park itself with the runways and the airport area. And then the area that's immediately to the west of that, that's part of the industrial park. It's not the entirety of the industrial park, but a portion of it. That would be the tax increment district. that would be the area where ad valorem tax revenue, that is new tax revenue, would be captured and allocated 75% to project costs and 25% back to the taxing entities. And then that larger box that you see in the red outline, that's what is our project area. All the project area means is that there might be expenditures somewhere within that. To make it real simple, it's just a rectangle box, okay? But there's anticipation that there will be some water and sewer infrastructure that would be coming to the industrial park, that would be outside of the TIF district boundaries itself. And so that's why we've drawn that little bit larger area to encompass things that might need to go on outside of the TIF district. But the actual development that's proposed would all be within that blue area that's the tax increment district. So the TIF would capture the ad valorem taxes. I mentioned allocated 75% to projects, 25% back to the taxing entities. It would also capture the construction sales tax that's generated. So we've made some assumptions relative to the development itself. A certain portion of that is going to be actual materials that are used to build buildings, going to be subject to construction sales tax. The city would coordinate heavily with Chet Hitt and his group to help coordinate to identify those dollars. But the reason why we want to capture that is this project will also qualify for Leverage Act funding, which means the state will actually match whatever the city contributes in sales tax. The state would match those funds with a portion of the state sales tax as well. So that provides some additional funding that potentially goes towards project costs. Term is a 25-year term. For purposes of kind of doing our assumptions, we assumed basically that, the start date would be sometime in 26. It would run towards the end of fiscal year 2051, so June 30, 2051. So it'd pick up 25 years worth of timeline. The project costs that we've identified, we've got about $26 million in infrastructure projects, and this is in Exhibit E of the project plan, so it's page E1 and following. So there's water system improvements, and if you want to start asking detailed questions about specifically what they need to be, I'm going to kick you over to Jim or somebody else to help answer that. But there's components over in the air park area that would need water and sewer service to be able to be extended out there. Some sanitary sewer system improvements that would include a couple of lift stations and upsizing lines to be able to serve development in the area. There's a number of air park improvements that total $10 million. That includes security, basically securing the area, potentially expanding the runway, providing internal taxiways and roads that are necessary and kind of in the context of secured area. The idea is that a lot of the development, if you got a lot of corporate industrial development out there, there may be a lot of opportunity to utilize the airport to serve that in different ways. And so enhancements to the airport, and then there's a 30% contingency that's added to that. That gets us to the $26 million. We've also identified about $43.8 million that would potentially be available for for what we call assistance and development financing. This is something that would be along with the infrastructure, but these would be potential either incentives or additional infrastructure that needs to be done that would be project specific. And so a specific project would come forward, the city would ultimately negotiate a development agreement, and there would potentially be an agreement that if they will do X, Y, and Z, the city will reimburse them that cost or fund that cost for them. TIF revenues would help facilitate the coverage of those costs. And then we've identified an additional about $23.3 million that's potential debt service. This is done kind of on very basic level, if we went out and funded $26 million worth of projects today over 25 years, we'd anticipate probably another $23 million or so of debt service. That's not to say that's what the city will do. The city will evaluate that. Not all the projects would necessarily need to be done day one, but just for kind of a scope of potential cost, we include that. And so combined total, the total estimate of all project costs would be $93.1 million. That is comprised then of, I didn't make very good notes for myself for my presentation. So we have estimated a little over $2.1 million in potential square footage of industrial and commercial office space throughout this industrial park. And you'll see, I think it's in Exhibit F. Yeah, so in Exhibit F, you see kind of a section layout. And so for purposes of a development, we've only assumed the industrial park development. We do anticipate that with potential airport activity, there may be some additional hangar developments, whatever, some of which may or may not be subject to ad valorem tax, depending on whether the city owns it or whether it's privately held. So we haven't made any assumptions on that side of the runway, if you will. But on the other side, the pure industrial park, you see the sections that are proposed, and then the next 2 pages following that basically show that broken out by lot. And so the anticipation is, and if you have questions, I'll let Chet Hitt come up here and kind of talk a little bit more if you'd like to hear a few-minute version of his vision for that. But the idea is that these locations would be individually developed by companies, you know, they're trying to recruit, in a lot of cases, to come from out of state, to come into Oklahoma and locate operations. And so there's an assumption as to the build out basically over the next 10 to 11 years. So obviously it's not all going to happen just like that overnight, but you know, a reasonably aggressive build out over the course of the next 10 to 11 years within each of those phases. That results, and you know, using an estimate of about $225 per square foot on the build out, that would be a capital investment of about $500 million in new space out there. For purposes of our assumptions, we've then taken 85% of that number, so we're estimating the taxable value would actually be about $425 million, and that's what we've projected given when things come online with tax revenues, that total amount of investment over the next 11 years. We've also, for purposes of business personal property, because we know these aren't going to be just empty buildings, there's going to be equipment. We have no way of knowing how much equipment you might be. I mean, if it's manufacturing, you might have a significant amount of value of heavy equipment in there. If it's more office, you may just have kind of your standard, you know, furnitures and fixtures. If there's any kind of, you know, computing, obviously you can have pretty significant value with electronics in there, but at the same time, you've got a fairly significantly rapid depreciation of that as well. So what we've done is we've just taken 10% of whatever the capital value or whatever the capital investment was in the real property, and we've said, all right, there's an additional 10% that's going to be for whatever that equipment. And then we've depreciated it over 10 years down to about 20% of its original value. We've not assumed any sort of capital replacement, which I think reasonably in a lot of cases you would see. I mean, ongoing businesses are going to have to replace things, and so that value is going to oscillate a little bit over time. So that's the basis for all of our projections. I mentioned the 85% of the real property value for taxable purposes. And then we've estimated that about 50% of the combined real and personal property investment will be purchases that are material, construction-related, things that are going to be subject to sales tax. So, based on all of that, and this is in the review committee resolution, the last 2 pages, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A gives us a summary of what we anticipate the sales tax collections to be. And so this is one-time construction sales tax. This is This would not include any retail sales. We don't anticipate any retail sales out there, but it's not proposed that that would be part of it. You would have about $237 million in total taxable sales that are subject to sales tax based on the basis of construction and equipment. A lot of equipment wouldn't be subject to sales tax, but office furniture, things like that, that would be. And that would generate, for the city at 4.25% tax rate, would generate about $10.1 million in sales tax. And I mentioned the Leverage Act dollars, so that would make the city eligible to have state matching funds of up to the same amount, $10.1 million. And we think that's a safe assumption that the city would be able to realize as matching funds whatever they generate, because as long as the state sales tax is greater than the city's sales tax, so 4.5 to 4.25, the net benefit to the state on one-time construction expenditures is always going to be greater. So we anticipate that the full amount would potentially be realized there. The county, based on their 0.75 cent current sales tax rate, would generate about $1.78 million. And again, most of this would be over the next 10 to 11 years during that construction period. It's not proposed that any of the county's sales tax is being captured here, but just acknowledging that would be a local revenue source that would be realized. And then you see the state would be closer to $10.7 million is what they would generate. So, and again, 10.1 potentially coming to the city. In Exhibit B, we've got the ad valorem projections, and so if anybody really wants to see it, some of you who've been on my committees in the past have seen it. I mean, I have a sheet, and you're welcome to a copy, that's kind of a breakdown by millage levy, by year, of exactly what everything is. I'm happy to share that, but it tends to bludgeon people over the head when I do that. So, kind of the highlights, we've got each levy. So you've got Grady County and their potential general fund sinking fund, the 4 mil levy that's actually for schools. You've got the health department, you've got the school general fund building fund sinking fund, you've got Canadian Valley general fund building fund sinking fund, and you'll note a lot of the sinking funds are zero outside of the school district. The Grady County EMS fund, Grady County EMS sinking fund, also zero right now, and then the city's sinking fund, which is currently zero. So those are all the potential tax levies, and so we're looking at what is the TIF capturing. So the TIF is capturing 100%. So in the maximum year, which is, basically after the thing is fully built out and before it's fully depreciated, so it's around 2037, 2038, somewhere in that range, you've got a little over $5 million in ad valorem taxes that would be generated that year based on that full build out. Over the entire 25-year term, you'd have almost $97.2 million in total ad valorem taxes. So if we allocate 75% of that to project costs, the other 25% to the taxing entities, the next two columns are that the same maximum year and then the 25-year time horizon, how much is generated by each of those individual levies within that maximum year. Within that maximum year, 25% that's going to the taxing entities, and within the 25 years, how much is going to each of the taxing entities. So you've got about $24.3 million of that 97.2 that's being allocated to the taxing entities over the 25-year time horizon. And then the table below that, then you've got the breakout that shows, again, the kind of the maximum year and the 25-year total, 75% going to the project costs, and then how much of each is allocated to each of those taxing entities. The bulk of it goes to the school district. We allocate the portion that's relative to the 4 mil levy. We're allocating that all to Chickasha schools as opposed to it being split up. And so you see in each case, you've got about almost 3.8 million of that year goes to TIF projects. You've got about 886,000 that's coming to the school district, and so on and so forth among the respective taxing entities. Questions on that point?
Is this different than the last TIF in the way it's broken out?
It's different in that in the last TIF, which was downtown area and then the east part along 62, that was a 50-50 allocation. Now the breakout of how the portion that goes to the taxing entities, that's structured the same. It's a pro rata basis based on each one's levies. So, you know, in the case of Canadian Valley, you've got 15.46 mils divided by 102.02 mils. I mean, we're making the assumption based on 25 levy rates. Obviously, levy rates generally beyond sinking fund rarely change. You know, we're anticipating that the school, at least for the foreseeable future, will continue to target around the 26 mils or so that they're currently at. If they went up, if the city ever went out and passed a GO bond issue, if the VOTEC or EMS district or anybody else went out and passed a GO bond issue and had a levy, that would increase the total levy rate. That would, in theory, increase the tax revenues that are being captured by the TIF district, and then that would be all allocated out to 75-25. But yeah, the main difference between the other TIF and this is 75% going to projects, 25 to the taxing entities versus 50-50. Any other questions on that?
And it's the same thing as the other TIF that we've done, where the money allocated going back to the school system is not counted against their
Correct.
general, right?
Yeah, the reason why we capture 100% under the TIF and then allocate a portion back to the school, county, everybody else doesn't really care. I mean, it's dollars or it's dollars. But for the school district, the general fund levy, which is, you know, 35% of the total of all the taxes that are paid go to the general fund. That's treated as what we call a chargeable for purposes of the state funding formula. And so as long as the school district is on the state funding formula, meaning they receive annual state aid, basically if you earn more at the local level, you get less at the state level because you're only allowed to have so many dollars per student for your operational budget for the year. So when we capture it in the TIF district, instead of letting it flow through 25% of the, if we pass through 25% of the general fund levy directly to the school district, they would effectively see a corresponding offset in the amount of state aid, so they wouldn't really get any meaningful benefit from that. But if we capture it within the TIF, and then we dedicate that same amount back to the school district, they can keep all of it and basically use it for whatever they feel like they need to use it for, because it's other funding, it's outside the state funding formula. So that it's a benefit to the school district. It doesn't really matter to anybody else, but it's a significant benefit in the way they can treat those revenues and be able to utilize them, operational or capital, however they see fit. Other questions? So the project plan itself kind of outlines the details of the project. It's got kind of the specific mechanics of how the revenues are captured, how they're allocated, for how long. It's got summaries of the financial impacts to the different taxing entities, kind of the basis for TIF districts when we talk about it. Right now, you've got property out there, it's generating on the order of hundreds of dollars in ad valorem tax every year. So, I mean, it certainly would seem beneficial if we can make that hundreds and add, 4, 5, 6 zeros behind it. That would certainly be very impactful to all the taxing entities. So the idea of the TIF district is without the TIF district, without the investment in infrastructure or the incentives that are potentially offered, you don't see that level of investment out there, and so that tax revenue is never realized. And so we don't anticipate that. I mean, this will probably have, a successful development will likely have an impact on the overall population of the city. I would anticipate if you can get a lot of jobs to locate here, you're gonna have quite a few of those people that choose to reside here in Chickasha. So you've got prospective additional development that's outside the scope of the TIF itself. With housing, you've got potential, investment as you add jobs and you add population, you add rooftops, then you potentially have additional commercial development. And again, a lot of that is potentially tied in with other TIF districts that the city has, but it stands to reason there may be some collateral impact significant as far as what might generate revenues for ad valorem and for sales tax purposes within the city. But the project itself, it's difficult to anticipate what specific impacts. I think the most likely impact, if you have significant population, you start to be concerned with capital needs of the school district. And so, you've got with significant development, you've got a substantial amount of revenue that's coming in on an annual basis that could potentially contribute towards that. You've hopefully got additional development throughout the city as a whole that adds additional bonding capacity for the school district. That's probably the biggest negative impact of TIFs generally on school districts is when you have the TIF, they don't get the benefit of the bonding capacity. So they're limited in how many bonds that they can have outstanding at any one time. They can only have 10% of their total net assessed valuation. We can't count the TIF value as part of their assessed valuation because the levy has to be calculated to generate enough to pay the sinking fund, and then it's the excess that's in the TIF district. That's what's generating the TIF revenue. So what that means is the school district for the duration of the TIF district can't bond against those projects that are going on out there. But again, they do have a portion of the revenue stream that's coming in on an annual basis that could potentially be contributed to that.
But that number, if they were able to bond on it, is taxable assessed value, right? Which right now is practically zero. So they're not using it currently to
and
bond.
a couple of the fund statistics. So if I'll pass this out just so you may or may not be able to read it. I may or may not be able to read it, but this is as big a piece of paper as I have at the office. So. So this breaks out each individual levy within, kind of clustered within each taxing entity, and then looking at it over time. And there's some summaries at the top, but the bottom middle part here, it's got a lot of really tiny numbers put together. That's an annual by levy basis of how much revenue the TIF would be apportioning. So of that 97 million, you've got the 23 million, I think 24 million that's going to the taxing entities. You've got the 72.9 million that's going to the project cost that's under City of Chickasha. And then over on the far right, there's kind of a breakout, kind of lumped together, county, health department, school, EMS, low-tech. And then if you flip over to the other side, what would those revenues look like if we had the same development and we didn't have any TIF? So this is the whole number of what would actually be generated during that time horizon. The last year, you'll note, is a half year during the term of the TIF. So basically the TIF ends at June 30th. We just capture a half year worth of ad valorem when that paid in. And so those numbers should continue on in perpetuity, but we're just trying to look at that 25-year time horizon. So if you go over on the right-hand side under the school, you see that over 25 years, it's about almost 68.2 million in total revenue. If we factor in that, 34 million is a chargeable, and that's going to get offset. $3 million is 4 mil school levy that goes to other schools in the county, doesn't come to Chickasha schools. They're not gonna get that. The 4 mil that does go to them, and it's about 22% of, 22.79% as of, I think, last school year's statistics. That's how much of that 4 mil goes to Chickasha schools. What they get of that, 75% of that gets treated as a chargeable, so only 25% of that is net new revenue that they get to keep. And then we look at the sinking fund. The school would have bonding capacity potentially. I'll get to that here in a second, but it would generate $25.3 million over the time horizon, but the city or the school can only levy what it has outstanding bonds. So if we make the assumption the school can continue to go out and get patron support to pass future bond elections, to maintain their levies at the 26 plus or minus mils over the next 25 years, then that's the basis for that assumption. So they would get, at those levy rates, potentially an extra $25.3 million. If we kind of back that down to what does that mean in terms of bonding capacity, given that, there'll be interest cost and all of that, that's more of a cash flow. And in today's dollars, that comes out to about 14.4, 14.5 million in bonding capacity. So that's kind of the net dollars that they potentially would get. So, or the net value. So if you look at a total, the school district, if it had that bonding capacity revenue, they might realize a total of about $30 million. As it stands with the 25% allocation, they're actually going to get a little over 17 million in that. So the school's actually getting about, call it 65% or so of the revenue that it would receive anyways if there was a full development, no TIF, which again, kind of going back to that argument, if we don't have the TIF, then we don't expect to have that level of development out there. So,
Well, in addition to, like you touched on earlier, all the auxiliary improvements, people moving to town, buying homes or building homes, all that's outside of the TIF, so
Correct.
that's all 100% sent where it was gonna go anyway, so.
correct. And we're not trying to project any of that in any of the capital investment or tax value, tax revenue that's being generated. So that's, again, all outside the TIF.
And currently, there's no ad valorem tax coming from these properties, correct?
There is, I think my number's gonna be too small.
Before, no, because it was city-owned, but now that Mr. Hitt has it, I think he did get assessed for this year, but it will be pretty nominal compared to, it went from 0 to
Yeah,
a little bit,
yeah.
but then obviously it's
So
gonna go to.
without the development, there's no significant ad valorem coming from these
Yeah,
areas.
shouldn't be, I wouldn't think, yeah.
I think, based on the 25 records, I think that's a 5, so a little under $16,000 in total ad valorem taxes. And so whatever the base value is, that'll be protected, kind of depending on timing of transactions and when the TIF takes effect. The base value, best guess right now is on the order of $145,000. It might potentially be higher than that if there's some transactions that occur before the valuation is set by the county assessor. But again, a nominal amount compared to, 15,000 compared to potentially 4 or 5 million a year is obviously a significant difference. But whatever the base value is when the assessor assigns that, the taxes off of that will continue to go 100%. So none of the existing tax revenue goes away or gets captured by the TIF district. It's only the new tax dollars that are generated.
Anybody have any other questions, or?
Just for clarification, when you're saying schools, you're talking about Chickasha public only?
Correct.
But all of the taxing, all of the recipients of ad valorem are getting 25%.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, each of the recipients are getting 25% of whatever their tax would have been without the TIF district. We talk a little more in depth in school district because you've got these offsets with the funding formula that make it clear as mud.
Right.
And I believe the reason for the difference between a 50/50 versus 75/25 is this project's gonna be pretty infrastructure improvement heavy. So there's gonna be a lot of cost associated with building this project out. So I think therein lies where the difference is.
And so our total estimate of project costs, infrastructure, what I call investment incentive, that's the assistance and development financing, which again, may substantially be infrastructure that's done by individual companies or by Chet and his group on behalf of companies, whatever the case may be, plus what we anticipate the potential interest cost. That totals our total project budget of $93.1 million. That's also our total of, that's our approximate total of sales tax plus leverage act plus ad valorem tax over that time horizon. So those numbers are equal, which is different from what we were talking about with the downtown and the other. We identified just massive amounts of infrastructure, but we didn't necessarily have a basis to project out that significant a level of development in there. And so that's why we had, $500 million of project costs, but we were projecting, $50 or $60 million of tax revenue over that time horizon.
Yeah, sure. It's basically a blank slate out there, whereas downtown was already built out for the most part.
Yeah.
Is this the only TIF that's in discussion for this area?
At this stage, yes. I mean, as we've mentioned at the prior meetings, there is contemplation of potentially an additional TIF and/or TID. So tax increment financing, or TIF, is when the taxpayer pays the taxes, but then it gets captured and allocated to the project purposes. A TID is a tax incentive district where there's an actual tax abatement. So I know you're all generally familiar. There's contemplation of a potential TID relative to a data center that might locate out there. It's further down the road, so while, this or the next meeting a week or so from now might be the last meeting of this review committee, for now, we would anticipate that we'd reconvene the group at the point in time that that particular project is ready to go forward, but it's premature at this time, so.
Say that potential land that's gonna be on, not even in city limits, so
Yeah.
there'd be some steps that have to happen before we'd even get to a TIF conversation.
Okay.
If my memory serves me right.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, we would have to annex any property. That's why I said there's a portion of the industrial park there that's, you kind of see carved out. That's what's anticipated might be a part of that future project. And then there would be additional property to the west of that would need to be annexed in order to be a part of any sort of a TID on that. And so, again, that'll be a project that's separately considered at a later date, so.
Anybody got anything else? Any more questions, comments?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Hitt a couple questions.
Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hitt. I just had a couple questions. I haven't been part of this, so I was just a little curious. I know you went to California to get some interest into our wonderful community. I just want to know, going forward with the TIF, you already have businesses lined up and ready to go.
Nothing's under contract. We have one 10-acre parcel. When you look at that map, you see a lot of 1 acres. We want to be able to accommodate whatever company's coming in. So they may have to buy lot 1, 2, 3, and 4 to get 4 acres. We are working with several different people, but we got to get some stuff in place to be able to do that. Have we, the first 10 acres is right there under contract. We're just waiting for this to get done, the plat. Once we have that, we anticipate the first phase of that company will be building 50,000 square feet, and ultimately they want 150,000 square feet. So you can do the math. If you round it up to 300 times, it's going to be $30-40 million project over time. So, but just depends on how quick they grow. But the first phase is 50,000.
Yeah.
And yes, we have several other people we're talking to, but once I have the final plat, which has to go through the city, then we'll turn this thing on and open it up for not just California, but anybody in the nation that wants to do it.
So you have some interest already, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one company right now that is coming out in January. They're wanting 20 acres and they need 80,000 square feet to do their development. And then they would close down in Texas and Southern California and combine everything into one. So we have that gentleman. We have another manufacturing company out of Southern California that does aerospace. And we are currently working with people. We're expanding our list. This Thursday, I have a meeting with a site coordinator. And basically what this guy does is he finds the expansion of what's expanding. And my meeting with him will be as we go to expand, or a company wants to expand, he's the site coordinator. He'll be the consultant that will bring federal monies to the table for businesses to relocate or expand their business here. So that's a big anticipated meeting that we're looking for this week that we haven't. I met him just casually, and now he's actually coming out this week for that meeting. So he's nationwide. He finds sites for expandability for aerospace.
Thank you.
Hit it?
Anybody got anything else? We covered all of items 3, right?
I
Review.
think so, yes.
Potential boundaries, potential infrastructure improvements, and draft project plan.
Unless anybody's got any specific questions on the project plan itself, again, if you've seen project plans before, there's a significant amount of boilerplate language that's related to the mechanics of the TIF, and then there's some specifics, and really the exhibits are where you get a lot of the detail, the project area, the parcels that are included. One thing that we don't have yet is the formal increment district legal description. That's something we'll need to get fairly quickly, but it will follow the boundaries that have been outlined in the map there. So again, just kind of getting the meets and bounds of that settled, and we'll include that. And then I think that's really the only thing that we don't have formally in the project or fully in the project plan. You've got the Exhibit E that gives a summary of the project costs and the assumptions for the revenues, the proposed site layout for the industrial park component. Then you've got just a picture, an Exhibit G of what it looks like aerial right now. A little bit later, so it's probably not quite that green in some areas anymore after the last week or two. Corporate limits of the city and the current zoning, and you'll note that this area, the industrial park, is actually zoned heavy industrial and has been for some time. The air park part is general commercial, so obviously you wouldn't have the heavy industry probably right in the air park itself. But again, we did not include any estimation of hangar development or other improvements at the airport itself, but I think that's a reasonable anticipation that may be a source. And so we've got identified project costs. The TIF expires at the end of the 25 years or at the point in time that it pays all of the designated project costs within that. So if it develops faster, if the value is much higher and it generates more revenue and everything gets done and it pays off in 18 years or 20 years or 23 years, then it can actually end early as well. And then at that point, all of it rolls onto the normal tax rolls, and 100% of the revenues go to each of the taxing jurisdictions.
Any more questions, comments, input? I appreciate every one of you being here because, you know, we want to be good community partners, so we want to have involvement from all the, obviously, the interested parties. I mean, I think that this project, I mean, the last 20-plus years has been grass, so, you know, actually having some infrastructure being put in and development happening is going to help everybody that's sitting up here, all of our respective entities, I believe, in the long run, so. Rick, you got anything? I want to give you time here.
Did Ms. Stegman talk with you about the school funding and how this be written for either the general fund or the building fund?
I'm trying to remember if I think I had a conversation with her about that. But yes, I mean, this is written so that it would be available for general fund or building fund or basically however you wanted to use it.
Okay.
And I think in the case of the most recent TIF downtown and the other areas, it's actually written where it would be designated to effectively building fund for capital.
That one was for the building fund.
Yes.
And she was wanting to make sure this one
Yes.
could also be available to the general fund as well
Yeah.
if possible.
Yeah, this one is worded differently so that, yes, it has that ability. It's basically revenues to offset kind of the contemplation for all the taxing entities. That 25% represents revenue to help offset impacts of the development that might be on, or might occur to any of the taxing entities. And so for purposes of the school, that could be used however you see fit. It's other revenue outside the funding formula, so we're not concerned. Because we're treating it as other revenue, it doesn't necessarily have to be used for capital projects
Thank you.
on the school side. Everybody else, use it however you lawfully want to.
I have a question about, I know there's an initiative petition about doing away with property taxes.
Yep, good question.
And how does a TIF roll up into that? If that initiative petition were to, if they were to get the signatures they need in 90 days, because Career Tech is 88% ad valorem funded.
If property taxes went away, well, never mind the giant problems that would potentially cause for everybody, but just within the TIF district, if you have no levy against property tax, then there is no TIF revenue generated.
So this would go away?
I mean, I guess the sales tax component would still be there, but yeah, if there were a change to the property tax law.
So it's not like this would get grandfathered in? It would go away as well?
No, because again, if you were inside a TIF district, you pay your property taxes at whatever rate you are lawfully required to pay. The TIF has no control over what that rate is. All of the taxing entities establish their rates through various elections at various times, once or periodically, and whatever those rates are. So again, we know that the tax rate is not going to be 102.02 mils every year for the next 25 years. We just use that as an assumption, and we assume it will be right around that number. If the levy rates go down by virtue of the elimination of property taxes or partial elimination of it, then that would have a significant negative impact on the TIF revenues. Conversely, if there were increase in property tax rates, because again, other jurisdictions within the city passed general obligation bonds and raised sinking fund levies, the levy rate would be higher. It would generate more TIF revenue than what we've projected. So, but yeah, it is subject to whatever the tax rates actually are. So, I don't want to think too much about what sort of problems that would have.
Yeah. My
I mean, if
fear
we could
is-
just eliminate property tax, income tax, and sales tax, then we're good, right?
Well, I'm afraid they're gonna get their signatures. That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to get your signatures, and then you also have to convince a lot of people that it's not a terrible idea.
Spent a lot of time on that this morning.
Not good.
But that, yeah, short answer, no,
Okay.
the tax rates are not somehow grandfathered in. Now, how the state might try and implement that, I haven't read what their petition is or specifically what they're proposing, how to do that. I doubt there's a
don't
lot
think
of
there's a plan at this
I don't
point.
think there's a lot of detail. I would be willing to bet there's not a lot of detail on how that actually gets implemented, but
All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, we'll move on to item 4. And it's consider take action with respect to resolution recommending that the city of Chickasha, Oklahoma through its city council create a tax increment district and approve the Chickasha Airport Industrial Park Economic Development Project Plan and making certain findings in regards thereto.
so the proposed resolution, we've talked about some of it already, but it basically outlines, what the responsibility of the committee is. It provides a general report of the financial impact, has a summary, and we're in section 3. There's section 3B has an overall summary of what the TIF is going to do, kind of the parameters and the amounts of revenues that we're talking about. And then starting in paragraph C, it goes through literally levy by levy exactly how each of the levies work and what the potential impacts, referring back to the exhibits that we've already looked at the back. Again, the net conclusion of the proposed resolution is that there's not a negative financial impact on any of the taxing entities by virtue of the fact that this is all new development, things that are coming in, potentially, capital investment coming in from out of state. And so, while the entities are giving up 75% of that new revenue, they're achieving 25% of revenue that right now doesn't exist. And so the net result is at least not negative. So that's the underlying conclusion of the resolution, so.
Anybody have any questions or discussion on that? This will go before, if it's passed, or we pass the resolution, it'll go before city council. There's 2 public hearings that's got to happen, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, once this committee makes their recommendation, then we'd have the planning commission, we'd schedule our public hearings, we've got to give notice, so that'd be out in January, would be our anticipated timeline. And then, based on the recommendations of planning, recommendations of this body, the 2 public hearings, then the city can consider its ordinance at that time.
And any type of contract or anything that's entered into regarding the TIF, this council still has to vote on. So there's other safeguards and steps in place.
Yeah, there would likely be, with respect to any sort of, investment in financial or assistance in development financing, there would be economic development agreements, plural, most likely, hopefully, that would be entered into at later dates. Any of the construction that would be done, to the extent that the city does it themselves, they would need to, go through their construction bid process, award contracts, so the city would be making multiple decisions along the way with respect to proceeding with any of the projects. If they're having someone else do it on their behalf, any developer, whatever the case may be, then they'd have a development agreement where the developer would be agreeing to do that on their behalf. So again, those would all have to come back before city council after. So the adoption of the ordinance is the end of the beginning, if you will.
If there's no questions or comments, I'd entertain a resolution or a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve it as written.
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Luke,
Yes.
Kirkpatrick,
Yes.
Crosland,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Mosley,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. I guess there's no reason to schedule another meeting time, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so your purpose is concluded as to this TIF, but again, we do hope to be coming back at some point. Do we have any sense of timeline for like a TIF or any sort of data center?
I've had conversations with them, they are moving forward, they quite a bit of money on that project, so I hope to hear something in the first quarter. On the TIF side of it, and that would be the power plant.
hopefully sometime after the new year, we'll be in a position to reconvene and have something to look at.
All right, well, I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for participating in this process, and with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
A second.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.